In this session, we're going to talk about averages. So first, let's recap what we mean by averages. There's a previous video on these, so if you need to, go back and have a look. We talk about mode, mean, median, and range. The mode is the simplest one. It's just the one that's the most common. So in a list of numbers, it's the one that appears the most often. The range is the spread of the data. So it's from highest to lowest, how spread out that data is. So we do the biggest number, take away the smallest to get the range. The median is the middle number in an ordered list. So the first thing you need to do is write the list out in order from smallest to largest, and then cross one off from either side until you get to the middle. If you're left with two numbers in the middle, find the middle of those two, and that would be the median. So to find the mean, all we need to do is add up all the points in our list, and then divide by how many there are. So if there's 6 values in our list, we would divide by 6, and that would get the mean. So now let's look at finding those averages from a frequency table. So if we have a table like this one, it tells us about the apples that are sold in a shop and how much they weigh. So we've got weights of 30, 40, 50 and 60 grams. And this tells us the frequency, so how many of those apples there are. So in the shop, there are 8 plus 12 plus 6 plus 4. So 30 apples in total, and they all have these different weights. If I was to write these in a list, I would write 30, 30, 30, 30, and so on 8 times. Then I would write 40 12 times. So this could go on for a while, which is why it's easier to have it in a table. Presents our data concisely so we can see how many apples there are for each weight. To find the mode, it's really straightforward. We just need to look for the highest frequency in our table. So it's the one that has the highest number in this column. So in this case, it would be 12. That's how many apples weigh 40 grams. So the mode for this question would be 40, because it's the apple weight that appears the most often. The next average we're going to look at from this table is the median. It gets a little more complicated trying to find the median, but the method is the same every single time. So all we do is, we start with the total frequency, so we add up all of those apples. There's 30 in total. So I need to find the middle of my data if there's 30 points in my data. So I'm going to add 1 to get 31, and I'm going to half it. That gives me 15.5. So in my list, I need to count the 15.5th value, and that will be the median. So to find this, I'm going to deal with my data as cumulative frequency. That means I'm going to add it up as I go along. So I'm going to start at the top. There's 8 points in that data at the top. There's 8 apples that weigh 30 grams. So that's not my 15.5th value. I've not got far enough yet. If I then add on the next lot of data points, 8 add 12 is 20. So there's now 20 points in total in those top 2 rows. That means I've gone past my 15.5th value because I've got to the 20th. So my median must be in that row that I've just gone past. So it's in the 40 grams. So the 15.5th value, the median, must be 40. Next, let's look at the mean from this table. In order to find the mean, I would need to add up all of those apples and how much they weigh. So I would have 30 added up 8 times. I would have 40 added up 12 times. So in order to make this easier for myself, I'm going to add an extra column onto my table. And I'm going to call it weight times frequency. So the weight of the apple, I'm just going to multiply it by how many apples there are. So for the first one, I'd say 30 times 8. For the second one, I'd say 40 times 12. Third one, 50 times 6. And fourth one, 60 times 4. So I can fill those values in on my table. So I get 240, 480, 300 and 240. If I now add that column up, that tells me in total how much every single apple in that shop weighs. So I get 1,260. We worked out at the beginning that there were 30 apples in the shop by total in the frequency column. So in order to find the mean, remember, we add them all up and we divide by how many there are. So adding them all up got me 1,260. There are 30 apples in total, So I'm just going to do 1,260 divided by 30. And that gets me 42 grams. So the mean weight of these apples is 42. Finally, let's just mention the range. They don't often ask you the range from a table because it's really straightforward. I've got my values in the table. They go from 30 to 60. That's the range of the weights. So all I'm going to do is do 60 take away 30. So the range weight of the apples would be 30 grams. So now we've looked at a normal frequency table. Let's make it a little bit harder. And let's look at a grouped frequency table. We can only estimate our values for this because we don't know the exact amounts. We've got classes of data instead of exact data points. So in this table, I've got the number of minutes that some aircraft are late at Heathrow Airport. So I've got 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and so on. So instead of having exact values, I just know that my points are within those ranges. So we're going to estimate for the mode, the median, and the mean this time. For the mode, it works exactly the same as before. We just look for the class with the highest frequency. So as you can see in this table, the highest frequency is 27. And that's for the first class, 0 to 10. So for the mode, I would just write 0 to 10. Just write the interval down. So the modal class is 0 to 10 minutes. So in this sample, there were 55 aircraft that arrived late. So we're going to take 55, the total, and we're going to add 1 to find the median, 56. Then I'm going to half it to get 28. So the median is the 28th value in my list. So all I'm going to do is take cumulative frequency again. So I'm going to add them up as I go along. So in my first row, there are 27 values. So I'm not quite there yet. But as soon as I add on the next lot of values, add on the 10, that gets me to 37. So I've gone past the 28th value. That means my median appears somewhere in that second row. So for the median class, we're just going to write 10 to 20. So in order to find the mean from a grouped frequency table, we're going to have to add 2 columns, because we're going to need to use an estimate. From between 0 and 10, we don't know what the exact values are, so we'll use the midpoint to have a guess. So let's fill in the midpoints in our table. So from 0 to 10, the midpoint would be 5. From 10 to 20, it would be 15, and so on. So let's fill those in. My final column, I'm going to use to do the midpoint multiplied by the frequency. So I'm going to do 27 times 5, 10 times 15, and so on. So let's fill those in. So now we've got our table filled in with the midpoint times the frequency. That's the column I'm going to total, and that'll tell me an estimate for the total number of minutes all of those aircraft were late in that airport. So if we add all those up, we get 925. If I add up my frequency, that tells me there were 55 aircraft in the sample. So all we're going to do for the mean is find the total of all of the minutes late for those aircraft, divide it by how many there were, so 925 divided by 55. So my answer is 16.8, and that is an estimate for the mean. We can't find the range for this table because obviously we've only got intervals. We don't know the exact values, so we don't calculate the range here.